Intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report. Partly sunny and pleasant today, a high of 78. Mainly clear tonight, low of 56. Partly sunny and pleasant tomorrow, a high of 78. And a low of 60. For Friday, some sun, breezy and nice, a high of 78, low of 64. Saturday, a shower and thunderstorm, a high of 76, low of 62. For Sunday, a couple of showers, high of 71, low of 58. For Monday, a couple of showers, high of 73 and low of 60, and for Tuesday, partly sunny, high of 75, low of 61. The pollen count today is high. Sunrise was at 5:39 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 8:49 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. Man arraigned in deaths of 4 in city, Cheektowaga. Wife and children ages 4 and 3 among those killed. The day after one of the deadliest days in Western New York history ended with more questions than answers. Law enforcement authorities were not willing to say what led to the deaths of 4 people, including 2 young children, in 2 separate incidents in Buffalo and Cheektowaga. But some details emerged Tuesday about who was involved. Salah Q. Mohammed, 29, was arraigned in Cheektowaga on Monday night and in Buffalo City Court on Tuesday afternoon on 4 murder charges stemming from 2 separate incidences Monday afternoon. He is charged for the deaths of his 26-year-old wife, Aisha Abdullah, and 2 children, 4 and 3-year-old boys, whose bodies were found about 3:20 p.m. in a residence on Ellen Drive in Cheektowaga. Shakura Mathuna, a 43-year-old employee at a corner store on Grant Street, was allegedly shot and killed by Mohammed in Black Rock less than an hour earlier, according to court documents. If convicted of the highest charge, first-degree murder, Mohammed would face life in prison without parole. Prosecutors have filed notice of intent to present the matter to an Erie County grand jury. Mohammed remains held without bail in the Erie County Holding Center. The related incidents created one of the most violent episodes ever in Western New York. The May 14, 2022 racist massacre at the Tops Supermarket on Chesterfield Avenue claimed the lives of 10 people. 12 years earlier, 4 people were killed and wounded in a shooting at the downtown restaurant City Grill, marking it, at the time, the worst incident of bloodshed ever in Buffalo. In terms of something similar happening within one family, the only crime that comes close happened in October 2022, when a Clarence husband of 4 fatally shot his mother and his wife at different locations before driving to a Newstead shooting range where he shot and killed his father and then himself. District Attorney Michael Keene called what happened Monday the worst of the worst kind of domestic violence cases, and Joseph M. Langdon, Buffalo Police Chief of Detectives, said the involvement of children affects the investigators. Thank God I didn't have to go in myself, the chief said. Authorities did not say specifically how the 2 shootings were connected in terms of motive, but Buffalo and Cheektowaga Police Departments began working together on the incidents Monday night and appeared together at a news conference Tuesday afternoon in the Erie County District Attorney's Office. Motive is not an element we have to prove, Keene said. At this point, I wouldn't want to speculate on that. Investigators in the Grant Street incident alerted other agencies of a Toyota RAV4 believed to be involved, and Cheektowaga police were looking for the same vehicle. The vehicle was spotted on Ellen Drive, where police say Mohammed drove to the scene after having apparently fled. At 2:38 p.m. Monday, Buffalo police were called by an employee to 1059 Grant Street near the intersection with Military Road and Austin Street, whose sign-in reads Arf's Deli. Muthana, a clerk at the deli, was shot multiple times and died at the scene. Keene said Mohammed and Muthana were both members of the Yemeni community, but it was not known if they knew each other. Melissa Burtis, a Lackawanna resident who previously lived in Black Rock, said she has visited Arf's Deli nearly every day for the last 4 years because of her interactions with Muthana. His kindness and generosity went a long way, she said Tuesday. I moved to Lackawanna and I traveled just because of the customer service. The employees, everything never changed. It always was and is a safe place for me. Buffalo Common Council member Joseph Gollenbeck, whose North District includes the deli, said the corner store and nearby intersection have been a frequent complaint of residents, often because of a group of people loitering outside. It just frustrates me because I live in the neighborhood, said Gollenbach, who noted many corner stores abide by the rules and benefit the neighborhood. I go for a walk every day. I walk by these places. I've been nervous sometimes walking by a deli because there's a half a dozen guys hanging out there. Cheektowaga police were called to the Ellen Drive address at 3:22 p.m. Monday for a welfare check after family members could not be reached and no one answered the door, said Brian Coons, Cheektowaga's chief of police. All 3 victims in the Ellen Drive home were shot inside the residence, Keene added. Mohammed returned to the scene after the 3 bodies were found and was arrested without incident, authorities said. Mohammed was a registered gun owner, authorities said, and they believed he used a 9mm pistol. No firearms were found in the house, and Mohammed has no criminal record, they added. The incident startled neighbors. Ellen Drive residents Chris Rucker and his wife, Nicole Stefanski Rucker, were in their living room around 3 p.m. when they heard shouting. It sounded like someone was yelling at their kids, Rucker said. 15 minutes later, we heard the sound like 6 or 7 pops, Rucker described. Honestly, it sounded like someone using a nail gun. After hearing the pops, Rucker and his wife went onto the porch to see 2 men and a woman yelling at one another, Rucker said. 2 police vehicles arrived quickly, Rucker said, and officers detained some of the people who were outside. Several other officers showed up shortly thereafter, Rucker said, with weapons drawn. The scene was definitely hectic, and the severity of the incident became apparent very quickly, Rucker said. We found out what happened about 20 minutes after that, but it was very sad to witness and see another child crying outside the house.
Thank you, Larry. Western New York native Genco named UB's next president. Carolyn Attardo Genco, a Buffalo native and provost at Tufts University, will be the 16th president of the University of Buffalo. Genco was appointed at Tuesday's meeting of the State University of New York Board of Trustees. Her appointment takes effect August 10th. Genco is the first woman and the first Buffalo native to be named UB's president, succeeding Satish Tripathi, who has held the post for the past 15 years. Dr. Genco has built a career as an academic and research leader who thrives to provide opportunities for students and faculty, said SUNY Chancellor John King. The appointment puts Genco at the helm of a prominent Western New York institution. UB has more than 30,000 undergraduate and graduate students. Its economic impact and influence extend far beyond the 3 area campuses. UB is the state's largest public research university and has 1,700 full-time faculty members and 6,800 full-time employees. Genco graduated from Mount St. Mary Academy in the town of Tonawanda in 1977 and received an undergraduate degree in biology from SUNY Fredonia State in 1981. She received a master's degree in microbiology from the University at Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry in 1984 and her PhD in microbiology from the same school in 1987. Before joining Tufts in Medford, Massachusetts in 2015, Genco held faculty appointments at Emory University and Morehouse School of Medicine, both in Atlanta, Georgia, and Boston University School of Medicine. Genco has served as the Chief Academic Officer since 2022, at first on an interim basis before being named to the post on a permanent basis the following year. I am proud to lead UB in its next chapter, she said at Tuesday's SUNY board meeting. Jenko will receive a total salary of $90,000, $600,000 from state-approved funds, $1,500 from the SUNY Research Foundation, and $150,000 from the Campus Foundation. Jenko said, as a Buffalo native, the daughter of immigrants, and the first in her family to attend college, and a SUNY undergraduate alumna, I have an authentic understanding of how education transforms lives and the critical role that the SUNY system plays in the lives of New Yorkers. Jenko said under Tripathi, UB expanded its research innovation and academic programs and has become a national leader in both. This strong foundation will serve us well as we complete our journey toward becoming a preeminent top 25 public flagship university that is responsive to the rapidly evolving national and global ecosystem and the state's persistence as a beacon of what higher education stands for, she said. Tripathi, UB's current president, is stepping down in July and will return to a faculty role. He has served as UB's president since 2011. UB began its presidential search in September. The search committee was headed by Jerry Jacobs Jr., a Delaware North Company executive who serves as a UB council chair. UB also worked with Russell Reynolds Associates, an executive search firm. The search committee reviewed about 50 qualified applicants and narrowed the field to 3 recommendations to King and the SUNY trustees. Jenko stood out in a crowded field, Jacobs said. It's worth noting that the field was highly impressive and included academics at the heights of their careers, he said. The process reinforced the University at Buffalo as a global destination for excellence, and that the higher education community knows we're poised to do even greater things and wants to be part of our success. Jacobs said in addition to her accomplishments as a researcher and administrator, Carolyn is passionate about the critical societal role of public higher education. Our committee admired her prioritization of student and faculty success, her unwavering commitment to integrity, and her vision for UB's bright future. And it helps that she's one of us, the kid from Buffalo who set out to achieve at the highest levels and now wants to come home, Jacobs said. To us, that's the ultimate success story. Both UB and Buffalo State are undergoing leadership changes this summer. At Buffalo State, Jennifer Burris, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Lenoir-Rhyne University in North Carolina, will take over as president July 1st. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Top U.S. spy agencies embroiled in a feud over turf and mission. Washington, the CIA has stopped contributing to some intelligence assessments, including those related to the Iran war produced by the Office of the nation's top spy, as disputes over intelligence sharing in areas of responsibility boil over, say people familiar with the matter. The infighting between the CIA and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the ODNI, has flared for more than a year, disrupting collaboration on national security analysis, on which presidents have long relied to navigate complex foreign challenges, said a U.S. official and 3 people with direct knowledge of the matter. The sources spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive material internally. At the heart of the disagreements is a clash over a task force set up in April 2025 by Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, the sources said. The CIA, led by Director John Ratcliffe, contends that Gabbard's Directors Initiatives Group has acted recklessly by circumventing traditional intelligence sharing and declassification protocols, said 2 of the people. ODNI officials say the CIA has consistently blocked the group's access to intelligence. The breakdown in collaboration between the intelligence agency comes at a perilous time for the Trump administration, with the U.S. embroiled in the Iran conflict and grappling with national security challenges ranging from Chinese military expansion to Russia's war in Ukraine. It also suggests that the post-September 11, 2001 reforms, which created a Director of National Intelligence to coordinate the 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, have not ended dysfunction. ODNI is supposed to be the oil in the system that keeps the arteries of the intelligence community flowing, that removes blockages, said Beth Sanner, a former deputy director of national intelligence during President Trump's first team. When you're not doing that, then you set up the potential that agencies are just going to kind of pull back into their stovepipes, and you set yourself up for intelligence failures. Gabbard said last week that she will step down as Trump's top spy on June 30th, citing her husband's illness. Trump said on Tuesday he was appointing Federal Housing Finance Agency Chief Bill Pulte as acting director of national intelligence. The president and policymakers continue to receive the best intelligence and analysis from the intelligence agencies, said Olivia Coleman, an ODNI spokeswoman. The Directors Initiatives Group operated within ODNI's oversight authorities and in support of the President's executive orders, Coleman said. Reuters in February reported that Gabbard had wound down the group and reassigned its personnel elsewhere in her agency amid congressional scrutiny of its activities. Under Director Ratcliffe, CIA quickly moved out of President Trump's priorities with a more aggressive agency taking smart risks to outmaneuver our adversaries and give the United States a decisive advantage, CIA Director of Public Affairs Liz Lyons said. Less cooperation. The CIA's move to significantly pare back its contributions to assessments produced by Gabbard's office is one of the most serious consequences of the agency's mutual distrust. The CIA has been one of the main contributors to the reports produced by the National Intelligence Council, NIC, the premier U.S. intelligence analytical body. The reports carry weight, especially during war. Two of the sources with direct knowledge of the matter said that assessments about Iran, where the U.S. military has been fighting since February, are among those the agency no longer regularly participates in. The CIA and ODNI now operate largely as two separate analytical operations, the sources said. At one point last year, the CIA stopped publishing NIC reports on the internal intelligence community distribution service it controls, briefly limiting the accessibility of the analytical projects, the sources said. A U.S. official said the reports were only withheld for a few hours as a result of a processing issue. The interagency friction started soon after Gabbard assumed her post in February 2025, the four sources said. Among her acts, first was to assert tighter control over production of the Presidential Daily Brief, the sources said. The CIA long had taken a lead role in compiling the brief, a highly classified daily compendium of intelligence reports prepared for the president. The relationship soured further with the creation of the Directors Initiatives Group to root out alleged politicization of the intelligence community, according to sources. The group also worked to declassify documents related to the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy, as well as investigate the security of election voting machines and the origins of COVID-19. Critics, including some former intelligence officials, charged that the group was established as a tool to extract retribution against Trump's perceived political foes. The task force members at several points pushed the CIA to share intelligence and materials needed to complete ODNI-assigned probes, but believed not enough was provided, according to two people with knowledge of the matter. Ouster of officers. In May 2025, Gabbard ousted two senior CIA officers who led the NIC. An intelligence official speaking on condition of anonymity said the ODNI removed the two because they created a toxic work environment, as documented in a workforce survey, because they had a history of politicizing intelligence. The official did not provide evidence to substantiate these claims. Then in August, Gabbard stripped the security clearance of 37 current and former officials, in the process revealing the identity of undercover CIA officer serving overseas. Gabbard charged that the 37 had politicized and leaked intelligence, but did not offer proof. Former officials and others charged that the move was in part in retaliation for a 2017 intelligence assessment that Russia had used an extensive influence operation to sway the 2016 presidential vote to Trump. The CIA-ODNI tensions pulled into public last month when a CIA officer detailed to the Directors Initiatives Group said to a Senate panel that the agency blocked the group's access to intelligence on the origins of COVID-19. That dispute has triggered an investigation by the Intelligence Community Inspector General's Office. An independent watchdog housed at ODNI said 2 people with knowledge of the probe. Reuters could not determine the scope of the probe.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:20. Today in history, Wednesday, June 3rd, 1904. Black American Dr. Charles Drew, a pioneer in medical research, was born. Drew is known for his work in developing long-term storage for blood plasma and working with the American Red Cross to organize the first extensive blood bank in the nation. 1943, racial tensions began to erupt across Los Angeles amid wool rationing in World War II when U.S. service members attacked people of color who wore suits that were purposely oversized and creatively tailored for a counterculture that many conservative opponents associated with gangsters. 1965, after NASA launched Gemini 4 into orbit, pilot Ed White became the first American astronaut to conduct a spacewalk. 1989, the Islamic Republic of Iran's first supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a former exile who led a 1978-79 revolution to end its monarchy, died. In 1989, the Chinese government sent armed forces with tanks into Tiananmen Square to halt a student-led protest seeking democracy. The military shot or crushed unarmed people, with death tolls estimates ranging from hundreds to thousands. And in 2017, 3 Islamic State-inspired terrorists drove a van into pedestrians on a London Bridge walkway, then attacked people with knives before being killed by authorities. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial. Tough but realistic. Buffalo's 19% tax hike is necessary for the city's financial health. There's nothing good about a double-digit tax hike for the city of Buffalo, but there is also nothing surprising about it. In the run-up to Mayor Sean Ryan's budget and for months before he was even in office, the dire state of Buffalo's finances had been laid bare repeatedly. Reluctance to raise taxes even incrementally over the last 2 decades, while overestimating revenues and underestimating expenses, are a big part of the reason the city is in the shape it is in now. There are no reserves left to fill a structural deficit State Comptroller Thomas D. Napoli says is $103 million. As reported by the News' Justin Sondel, the Common Council and Ryan's team did what they could by reducing the proposed tax levy increase from 25.8% to 19%, though some Common Council members remained unconvinced. Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope, Council President pro tempore Zanetta Everhart, and North District Council member Joseph Golenbeck instead proposed, unsuccessfully, a budget package with far more drastic cuts. The fact that a majority of members were also able to support the 19% increase is a strong indication that they're willing to face reality, however unpopular that reality is. Buffalo has to walk itself back into this fiscal catastrophe, and higher taxes must be, at least initially, part of that solution. Without a substantial tax increase, there could be understandable cuts in city services that have already been found inadequate and continued neglect of basic infrastructure repairs that have already been ignored for years. It's possible that some of the objections made to Ryan's budget had as much to do with optics as with fiscal reality. A prime example is renewed attention to Ryan's 4 deputy mayor system. The Common Council approved those positions, presented as revenue neutral unanimously in December. The deputy mayors have become poster children for those opposed to Ryan's budget, despite the mayor's contention that other administrative cuts more than made up their salaries, not to mention the council's unanimous vote in favor. No matter this kind of symbolic debate that politicians typically use to stir up public outrage, whether it has any real bearing on the issue or not. And then we have Halton Pope's last-minute resolution asking the control board to revert to hard oversight of city finances, which it exercised between 2003 and 2012. It's well known that Halton Pope will be exiting the Common Council within months. She has been chosen to run for Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes' seat in November on the Democratic line, and there is no Republican opposition. Write-ins are always possible, but given political realities, Halton Pope is likely to change the victorious outcome. The bottom line, in the unlikely event of a hard control board, Halton Pope won't be around to defend the layoffs, cuts in services, and frozen salaries that will probably result. As for Golenbeck, who approved all the budgets and no tax increases that brought the city to this point, his no vote would have been much more useful back then. It's time to leave political theater behind and work instead to bring the city's finances back into balance. Council members should be reaching out to struggling constituents and assisting them with programs that will help reduce their property tax payments. Many such programs exist. Again, a tax increase is nothing to celebrate. Ideally, future levies will be considerably lower. Going forward, it will be important for city lawmakers to carefully monitor major municipal projects and initiatives as well as finances. Given complaints about transparency regarding the tax hike, though again, who could really be surprised? The Ryan administration should be forthcoming with information, anticipating questions rather than waiting to be asked. City residents don't need any more political drama. What's needed is a dramatic improvement in both Buffalo's financial outlook and its services. That won't happen unless everybody in City Hall can find a way to work well together. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one's by Steve Breen of Creator Syndicate. And let me see. Inflation rate lately shows going up, and if you have a chart of inflation, it goes up and down a little bit, up a lot, down a little bit. It look like steps going up. And this one shows inflation rate going right up into the clouds here. And there is Uncle Sam, and he's trying to run up the stairs of the inflation symbol, and he's huffing and puffing, and it is called Runner's High. The second cartoon is by Gary Varvel, also of Creator Syndicate, and it shows Congressman Schumer at a podium, and then there's a man next to him, and Mr. Schumer says, "We will stop the anti-weaponization fund," and the man next to him quips, "But not Congress' sexual harassment fund." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorials. New ICE legislation is unenforceable. The recently passed state budget contains 3 provisions where our legislators mistakenly believe they can regulate ICE in enforcing immigration law: masks, lawsuits, location restrictions. A Buffalo News editorial from May 17th inexplicably endorses the same. States have zero authority to restrict federal officers wearing masks. Federal courts have already ruled so in an identical case in California. State legislatures surely knew this, but passed it anyway. Expanding the rights of citizens to sue federal officers in state court is foolhardy. Under 28 U.S.C. 1422, any such action is removed to federal court for adjudication. The principle is simple. The federal government can't allow states to persecute federal officers when they act within the scope of their authority. Finally, the state has no authority to restrict where, when, or how federal officers enforce federal law. This section can be pernicious. Citizens might incorrectly believe they have a right to obstruct federal agencies and find themselves violating federal criminal law. State authorities and their editorial cheerleaders have clearly shown they need a crash course in the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution. As New York continues hurtling recklessly toward the progressive cliff, it apparently decided along the way to pass some unenforceable performative legislation favoring lawbreakers over law enforcers. The News editorial board then agreed. Brilliant move by both. The cliff you're looking for is that way. Keep going, you can't miss it. This from Gary Brignon of Amherst.
Thank you, Larry. Data center costs overwhelm benefits. No doubt, tax revenue from massive data center projects has helped support local municipalities. But these projects also come with significant costs that are ultimately shared by all taxpayers. Much of the rapid expansion of data centers is being subsidized by taxpayers through generous sales tax exemptions on equipment and infrastructure. While these incentives reduce costs for developers, it's debatable whether the long-term benefits outweigh the burden placed on local budgets and residents. These enormous facilities consume vast amounts of electricity, placing immense strain on aging local and state power grids while contributing to higher energy costs for homeowners, renters, and businesses alike. Data centers also require millions of gallons of water daily for cooling systems. Heated wastewater discharged back into the surrounding lands and waterways can harm local ecosystems, as environmental advocates have warned in Ithaca and other communities. Construction projects create temporary jobs, but once operational, few permanent positions remain. And then there is a quality of life issue. Would you like to live next door to the constant low-frequency hum of industrial cooling fans? Ask residents in Tonawanda. Noise from cooling equipment and emissions from diesel backup generators can travel for miles. Local community groups are calling for greater transparency, stronger environmental reviews, and a larger public voice before additional projects are approved. New York lawmakers who have proposed a 3-year moratorium on new data center permits need our support. Write or email your assembly members, state senators, and the governor's office to make your voice heard. This is written by Raymond Volpe of Amherst. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Immigration protests are without validity. Politically motivated protests against law enforcement of our immigration laws are being given sensational, inordinate coverage and credibility, especially on TV. Arresting resisting lawbreakers is never an attractive process. Peaceful trespass, while purloining citizens' jobs and benefits, is not legitimate and is a violation of our immigration laws. Allowing millions of these illegal invaders to gain access to our political system and have their interests gain priority over those of U.S. citizens, as in New York State, is a defined threat to our democratic republic. Media should verify the incidents being protested actually happened and the size and status of the protests, and protesters are given proper context. And this from Louis L. Bain of Orchard Park. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:33. Some opinion columns. This one is Another Voice, and it's about immigration. It's written by Alberto O. Capias, is the publisher of the Buffalo Latino Village and a longtime community advocate on West Side. I sat with a mother on Buffalo's West Side who told me she no longer walks her children to school. Not because she fears crime, but because she fears being stopped by ICE. She hesitated even to speak with me, and I promised not to use her name. Her 2 children, both U.S. citizens, now ask why she watches them from the window instead of walking them to the school bus. That simple image, a mother afraid to step outside, captures a reality many Latino families in Buffalo are living with, often unnoticed by the wider public. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. Our legal status protects us from detention and deportation, but many of our Latino neighbors from Latin American countries do not have that protection. Their vulnerability is not theoretical. It shapes their daily routines, their movements, and their sense of safety. Workers avoid driving to job sites, and parents skip grocery trips. Children absorb this fear long before adults admit it. Anxiety becomes part of the household atmosphere. Latino-owned restaurants and retail stores, places that serve as cultural anchors, feel the impact when families stay home. A neighborhood cannot thrive when its residents feel they must live in the shadows. With the Batavia detention facility nearby, families here know that an encounter with ICE can lead to detention or sudden separation. Some leaders and advocates have taken steps to limit involvement in federal civil immigration enforcement, But policy alone cannot calm a child who wonders why their mother no longer walks them to school. Families need to know their rights, what to do if approached, and where to find trustworthy legal help. They need to know how to prepare emergency plans for their children. We must resist the temptation to say, "This is not my problem." Many Latino families in Buffalo are mixed status. Fear in one part of the community eventually touches us all. Buffalo's Latino community has survived many challenges. We deserve to live in a city where families can walk to school without fear, where children feel safe, and where no one is forced into invisibility. Our Latino community leaders must speak up. The City of Good Neighbors must speak up. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Following is from Jim Nolan. He's with the Chicago Tribune. Congressional gerrymandering akin to a circular firing squad. Frenzied congressional gerrymandering across the states has become a circular firing squad. Both parties mow down the other's representation, with Lady Democracy and the public caught in the crossfire. Readers of the editorial pages by now know the arguments. To recap, extreme gerrymandering makes the primary of the dominant party the election, depriving about 7 of 8 registered voters a role in the election process as they don't vote in the primary. Reduces competition and voter turnout. Increases cynicism toward Congress, which is already low. Treats voters as pawns in the game, moved around by computer remapping to ensure re-election for incumbents and political control by the party in the majority. Drives polarization. Primary nomination winners can ignore voters outside their very narrow support base in both elections and governing. Diverts quality candidates who refuse to play the game and join voters on the sidelines. Prior to 1962, many states had not redrawn their congressional and state legislative districts in generations. As a result, for example, one state senator in California represented 5,000 people, whereas another in Los Angeles County represented 5 million. In Baker v. Carr, 1962, and subsequent decisions, the Supreme Court dictated that all districts must have equal populations, drawing upon the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. My back-of-the-envelope reckoning shows that at present, with more partisan changes likely, Republicans across the South, from Texas to South Carolina and Florida, are projected to capture 83 congressional seats to 22 for Democrats. To counter, Democrats in the major blue states of California, Illinois, and New York are set to win 84 seats versus 11 for Republicans. Regional polarization, you say? State legislative leaders in Illinois have floated a state constitutional amendment on redistricting that, in a literal reading, would require that districts be contiguous. For readers who skipped the history in college, be admonished that democracy is a rather fragile construct. Furthering short-term hyperpartisan goals over representativeness risks destabilizing our system of government. The Supreme Court has stated firmly that it won't intervene in partisan redistricting. So, members of Congress must stand back from the mayhem and provide the states, which do the redistricting, with reasonable guidelines that would result in fair, not perfect, districts. Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution provides Congress the authority to do this. My insider friends say Congress will never act. Never is a long time. Indeed, nothing will happen in the present environment. However, the path to the 2030 census and 2031 redistricting will be paved with change. Donald Trump has been the agitator for extreme gerrymandering and will be gone after the 2028. The 2030 census will also focus public attention on the 2031 redistricting process. Advocates for fair mapping will continue telling voters that elected officials who pull us apart rather than draw us together are not to be trusted. Members of Congress interested in public service over personal and strictly partisan goals should create an informal study group now to look at fair mapping guidelines to be used by the states. In addition to equal population per district, these provisos might include compactness, the following of governmental boundaries wherever possible, and a prohibition on the use of partisan voting history in district. The circular firing squad must stand down. Congress has to put its own house in order.
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. New calling for former church complex on tap. A nonprofit agency that provides hearing, speech, autism, and other services for children and families wants to renovate a vacant former Catholic elementary school and convent to expand its early intervention and special education services for young children. The Buffalo Hearing and Speech Center, based on the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, is seeking to buy and rehab the two buildings of the St. Aloysius Gonzaga Roman Catholic Church campus in Cheektowaga, where it would centralize and expand its public school-funded program for children with developmental challenges, disabilities, and special needs. The nonprofit says the $9.3 million project is intended to address a growing demand for such support. Buffalo Hearing serves more than 11,000 people a year, but it has an oversubscribed wait list that it can't serve. Its current leased space at 170 Rosewood Terrace in Cheektowaga is outdated and too small, with an insufficient number of classrooms for the growing needs of Erie County families with special needs students, according to an application for tax breaks submitted by contractor Samuel Savarino to the Erie County Industrial Development Agency. The new campus would address that, with more than 20 classrooms, enabling the agency to serve 40 more children in its first few years of operation. St. Aloysius was one of 70 parishes in 8 counties that the Catholic Diocese targeted for closure in September 2024 as part of a massive reconstructing to address a priest shortage, dwindling attendance, and fiscal challenges. Parishioners fought the plan, but diocese officials intended to merge the parish with Christ the King Parish in Snyder and sell the St. Aloysius property. Plans call for the nonprofit to purchase the 50,000 square foot school building, the separate convent building, and the 5-acre property at 157 Cleveland Drive for $825,000, and then spend $5.8 million on an overhaul to update the 3-story school for its early childhood education program. It would then vacate its current space. The purchase does not include the St. Aloysius Church or Rectory, which remain with the parish. The school building consists of 2 portions, one built in 1947 and one in 1957. It hasn't been used as a school or convent in years, but has hosted Cub Scout meetings and bingo events. The agency is not at risk for moving out of the area or out of state and might not normally need or qualify for tax breaks, but it plans to use $2.5 million in state and federal historic tax credits to finance the project. To do so, though, it must form a for-profit subsidiary to own the project and receive those benefits, since it doesn't have any tax liability as a nonprofit. It would then sell those tax credits to investors, putting the proceeds back into the project. As a result, though, the cost of buying materials and equipment would be subject to sales tax, adding expenses that would make the project less financially feasible. So the center is asking the ECIDA for $228,375 in sales tax breaks on up to $2.61 million in eligible purchases, as well as a $52,500 mortgage recording tax abatement on a $7 million loan, as well as property tax breaks. The 80-year complex has been empty for more than a year and underused for at least 5 years, so the nonprofit is also applying under ECIDA's adaptive reuse policy. Without help, BHSC says it won't pursue the project, the application said. In exchange, it pledged to retain 47 full-time jobs and create 18 new ones within 2 years paying an average salary of $52,742, but ranging from $37,332 to $65,847. If approved, work by Severino Construction Services could begin by June 27th, with completion by August 2027. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Americans can expect to pay more for food into next year. As Americans confront a surge in prices at the pump, another inflation wave is headed for the grocery store. A combination of factors, including bad weather, tariffs, and a dwindling cattle herd, are already pushing up grocery prices at an above-average pace. In April, they rose by the most in nearly 4 years, and economists say the impact of the Iran war and a potential El Nino weather pattern will only add to the pressures into 2027. The hit to U.S. household finances from higher grocery bills is set to intensify just ahead of the November midterm elections, amplifying affordability as a defining issue. And to a greater extent than the surge in gas prices, the slower-moving food shock will be difficult to reverse quickly because the size of autumn harvests is determined by planting decisions made in the spring. It's going to be a challenging year, said Ricky Volpe, agribusiness professor at California Polytechnic State University. Food is going to become less affordable, and consumers should be prepared for it. The latest USDA Food Service price outlook, published Friday, projected a 3.2% advance in grocery prices this year, while Volpe said he expects inflation more on the order of 4% to 4.5%. Outsized price increases so far in 2026 have reflected a mix of bad luck, trade policy, and slower-moving pressures linked to climate change. The weather in particular has not been kind to American farmers who have endured outbursts of record-breaking heat, historic cold, ping-pong-sized hail, and wildfires. The U.S. saw its warmest ever start to the year, with temperatures running about 6 degrees above average through the end of April, according to the National Centers for Environmental Information. The early heat prompted some domestic crops to begin blooming weeks ahead of schedule instead of remaining dormant throughout the winter, leaving them exposed to subsequent frosts, according to Brad Rippey, a USDA meteorologist. Beef prices, among the most politically sensitive in the U.S., rose to a record in April thanks to the smallest cattle herd in 75 years, squeezed by drought and high production costs. Tomato prices, meanwhile, surged 33% over the last 2 months after 2 winter storms brought widespread damage during the peak of the growing season in Florida, while shipments from Mexico were declining following the Trump administration's imposition of duties on imports. Heat and drought in the western and central U.S. spell more pressure to come. California accounts for almost half of the annual U.S. vegetable and 3/4 of fruit and nut cash receipts, and diminished snowpack in the Sierra Nevada this year to just 23% of typical levels as of mid-April has raised concerns about irrigation supplies. Drought has also spread across the nation's breadbasket, where staple wheat crops that are typically used to make all-purpose flour or pasta have withered for lack of rain. As of May 19, 70% of U.S. winter wheat production was in areas of drought, along with 25% of corn production, according to the National Drought Mitigation Center at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Burke Robert W. Chabril Lynn M. Ne Welch. Consolacion L. Ne Lopez Cordero. Eder Carol A. McLive. Greg Frank P. Hankinson Joshua. Hartman Robert F. Hodge John. Knoll John C. Mazurek Jean M. Maroli Frank. Partridge Mary Jane née Giblin. Scherer Patricia. Schofield John. Scott B.J. Strauss Bernadine née Tobe. Sweet James W. Jim. And Ronald Laprede the co-founder and former bassist of the funk and soul group The Commodores, has died. He was 75. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars, happy birthday for Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. You are pioneering, independent, and dedicated to your beliefs. You are also intellectually restless and keen to share your ideas. This is a year of new beginnings, adventures, and major changes. Be ready to take action. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, and 2 so-so, 1 difficult. Aries, 2 stars. This is a disconcerting day because family discussions will be confusing and out of touch with reality. Tonight, be cautious. Taurus, 3 stars. You might be tempted to keep secrets today in the mistaken belief that this is the best course. It isn't. It will only contribute to the fog of confusion and unclarity that surrounds you today. Tonight, double-check information. Gemini, 2 stars. This is a poor day for financial negotiations and money decisions. You might not have all the facts, or the facts that you have might be incorrect because you could be the victim of misrepresentation. Tonight, check your finances. Cancer, 2 stars. Today, Mercury is in your sign at odds with fuzzy Neptune, which will contribute to confusion. Communications with others might be hopelessly misunderstood. Tonight, keep things light. Leo, 3 stars. You might be tempted to withhold information today because you think it's the best thing to do. Actually, it's not good to do this. It will only add to further confusion. Tonight, be helpful. Virgo, 2 stars. A friend or a member of a group might tell you something that you want to believe because it's a pie-in-the-sky solution or an intriguing temptation. Tonight, relax. Libra, 2 stars. Tread carefully when talking to parents, bosses, or people in authority today because what you say might not be true. Tonight, focus on home and family. Scorpio, 3 stars. This is not the day to pitch your ideas to someone, to teach a new concept to someone, or to embrace a new philosophy or political ideology. Tonight, think before you speak. Sagittarius, 3 stars. This is a poor day for financial discussions or agreements pertaining to wills, inheritances, taxes, debt, or shared property. Tonight, save your money. Capricorn, 2 stars. Discussions with partners, spouses, and close friends will be subject to misunderstandings today. For some reason, a distortion of the truth is highly likely today, and it might be innocent or not. Tonight, be cautious. Aquarius, 3 stars. This is a challenging day at work. You might have the wrong information and waste time doing a fruitless task. Tonight, listen. Pisces, 3 stars. Today, it's easy to fall for a great idea or think that something is too good to believe. Tonight, observe.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Warm water helps relieve ankle pain. Dear Heloise, I learned of a way to help with ankle pain. Actually, I have a lot of pain all over, but to help my ankles a bit when taking a shower, I plug the drain and let the warm/hot water go up and around my ankles. It does help quite a bit, and it doesn't use up any additional water. Any relief is good relief. Thanks for publishing your wonderful column, and that's from DK. DK, I'm sorry to hear about your ankles giving you so much discomfort, but I hope the warm water keeps helping with your pain. If my readers know of any other remedies for ankle pain or pain in general, please submit them to Heloise at Heloise.com. Shiny mirrors. To clean your bathroom mirror, use a premium automotive windshield cleaner. The surface will be very clean and be protected from splashes. You can use this cleaner on your exterior home windows in the spring. It's also good for patio doors and front storm doors where pets enter. It protects the shine better and keeps windows clean for longer. That's from BC and Wisconsin. Deviled eggs and more. Dear Heloise, I usually prepare deviled eggs for family gatherings. Sometimes it's too much to boil, peel, and prepare the yolks at one time. This past Easter, I boiled and peeled the eggs the day before. Then I put them in a refrigerator whole. On Sunday after church and a couple of hours before dinner, I finished preparing them. We couldn't tell the difference. Another hint I've been wanting to share is that I put a roll of toilet paper in the refrigerator to eliminate odors. I've been doing this for about a year and it works. If you start to smell an odor in the refrigerator, place the roll and use one from the bathroom. No waste. If you're older like me, be sure you tell your family why you're storing toilet paper in your refrigerator so that they don't think you're losing your mind. This is from Linda H. in Lincoln, Nebraska. Linda, if I were you, I think I'd prefer a roll of toilet paper that was fresh from the package instead of the bathroom for reduced bacteria in my refrigerator. And that's the response from Heloise. And
Hey.
flea season advice. Dear Heloise, flea season is upon us, and I have some advice to give to your readers since I work with dogs all day, every day. If your dog or cat has fleas, be sure to bathe them frequently and brush them daily. Brushing will help remove the flea eggs, so do this outside if you can. Also use a flea and tick collar. Your vet will have flea prevention medication. I don't recommend over-the-counter anti-flea applications because most of them don't work or only work for a very short time. In addition, if you or anyone in your home has itchy red specks on their legs, you may have fleas in your rugs and carpets. This will require professional steam cleaning. A regular vacuum usually doesn't have enough suction to pull out many fleas. And this is from Kelly in Macon, Georgia. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Canada meets with U.S. Trade Representative. Washington. Canada had a positive meeting with the U.S. on the review of their free trade deal. Canada's minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, Dominic LeBlanc, said Tuesday in Washington, but declined to provide details. LeBlanc, who met with U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer, along with Canada's chief trade negotiator, Janice Charette, did not comment on when formal negotiations between the two countries will start. We presented a number of specific proposals to Ambassador Greer that we think are good in the broader context of the North American economy and respond to some long-standing issues that the United States has raised with us, he said. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has tried to diversify trade, but Canada's economy remains heavily dependent on the U.S. And states sue over offshore wind lease cancellation. 7 U.S. states, led by New York, sued the Trump administration on Tuesday for canceling a major offshore wind lease off the coast of New York. The lawsuit in the Washington, D.C. federal court challenges a March 23rd decision by the Interior Department to cancel a lease by a subsidiary of France's Total Energies, reimburse $795 million to the company, and extract a pledge from the company not to develop new offshore wind projects in the U.S. The suing states include New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Vermont. This pay-not-to-play scheme, pressuring a foreign company to forego planned offshore wind projects in America in favor of gas and oil drilling, is an outrageous abuse of taxpayer dollars that hurts our ability to meet our energy needs, create good jobs, and help secure American energy independence while reducing emissions, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said in a statement. Officials from the Interior Department of Justice and Total Energies did not immediately respond to requests. And
We're good.
obesity. Medicare patients eligible for GLP-1 weight loss drugs will be able to get them for $50 a month starting in July, U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Mehmet Oz, told a briefing Tuesday.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, June 3rd on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan.
Some local and regional news. Kennedy seeks more DHS transparency. Even as his relatives waited for him to be released from the Erie County Holding Center, no one told them that Nurul Ahmed Shah Alam had been already handed over to officers from the Department of Homeland Security. By the time they learned he had already been moved from the facility, Shah Alam, who spoke very little English and was nearly blind, was missing. 5 days later, his body was found near KeyBank Center, about 5 miles from his home. Now, U.S. Representative Tim Kennedy, Democrat of Buffalo, wants to make sure that federal immigration officers cannot release detainees without first telling their families or attorneys where they are going. Kennedy is set to introduce a bill that he hopes will protect people in immigration custody from the same fate as Shah Alam, 56, whose death was ruled a homicide in April. Kennedy was joined by community leaders Tuesday morning to announce the DHS Release Transparency Act, legislation that would require immigration and customs enforcement and Customs and Border Protection officials to notify families of detainees before they are released. Kennedy's bill comes 3 months after the death of Shah Alam made national headlines in light of the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration. Shah Alam was released from the holding center into the custody of DHS agents because they believed he was set to be deported. When they soon discovered he had legal status in the U.S., the agents left him at a Tim Hortons in near freezing temperatures. Shah Alam was a member of the persecuted Rohingya minority in Myanmar. He and his family had been living in a refugee camp in Malaysia. The coffee shop's dining room was closed, and Shah Alam was not wearing warm clothes or proper footwear for the winter conditions. This death was completely avoidable, Kennedy said at a news conference Tuesday morning outside the Robert H. Jackson Federal Courthouse in Buffalo. This legislation will save lives and help prevent future tragedies like what happened right here in Buffalo. Kennedy was joined by Erie County Comptroller Kevin Hartwick, along with county legislators Tasha St. John Tard and Lawrence Dupre. Also present was Grace Karambizi, Executive Director of the Buffalo Immigration Leadership Team, and Terrence Connors, the attorney representing Shah Alam's family. Kennedy noted that the bill requires that DHS agents make a good faith attempt, or at least 2 calls, to notify the person that a detainee gives as their point of contact. In addition to notifying family of the release of a detainee, the legislation would require DHS to provide translation and interpretation services throughout the point of contact notification process. This bill includes protections to ensure that contact information cannot be used for enforcement purposes and that language barriers do not prevent families from receiving critical information, said Dupre. Currently, neither ICE nor CBP are required to provide notice to a point of contact when a detainee is released. Instead, the detainee is notified personally and given the opportunity to make a free phone call. This standard is not codified and varies across ICE facilities, Kennedy said. Kennedy and Hardwick shared their hopes for bipartisan support of the legislation in Washington. I'm sure in certain quarters in our community, this legislation being proposed by the congressman will be viewed as anti-ICE, said Hardwick. We should have control of our own borders, but this isn't about that. This is about a man who should have been alive, who was denied that inalienable right because of the lack of legislation like this. In April, the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office ruled Shah Alam's death a homicide. A spokeswoman for Erie County District Attorney Michael Kane said their office's investigation into Shah Alam's death remains ongoing. The medical examiner's office determined that the cause of death was complications from a perforated duodenal ulcer, commonly referred to as a stress ulcer, caused by hypothermia and dehydration. His family waited outside the holding center for him to be released. They were there, keeping vigil for hours, waiting for him to take him home, but instead he was whisked away by the Border Patrol through some back exit, and as the objective medical examiner said, left in a situation where he could not extricate himself from, Connors said. Kennedy and fellow community leaders expressed a sense of urgency in getting the legislation passed, largely due to a pressing concern that cases like Shah Alam's could happen again. This legislation makes an immediate impact, and I can tell you without any doubt whatsoever that if this legislation were in effect, Shah Alam would be alive today, Connors said. A spokesman for DHS in Buffalo, who has asserted in the past that Shah Alam was left somewhere that officers described as a safe and warm environment, did not reply to a request for comment on Tuesday. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Lawmakers urge Dunkirk. Pass home rule message. 2 state lawmakers that represent Chautauqua County are urging the city of Dunkirk to grant a home rule message to allow the state to extend a law to help the city borrow money to address its fiscal woes. Under the Dunkirk Fiscal Recovery Act, the financially ravaged city of 12,743 on Lake Erie is authorized for temporary deficit financing to preserve essential city services during the recovery period and to support a sustainable path toward long-term fiscal stability, according to a memo from its sponsors. Assemblymember Andrew Molitor, Republican Westfield, and Senator George Borrello, Republican Sunset Bay. On Monday, the lawmakers warned that the extension of the law requested by the city cannot move forward without the home rule approval from Mayor Kate Wojciechowicz and the city's Common Council. With state lawmakers set to depart Albany for the year after this week, this leaves a short window for the city to provide the state with approval to pass the extension. We have done our part. The city must now do theirs, the lawmakers said in a statement. Every day of inaction is another day Dunkirk moves closer to a fiscal cliff that will threaten services, strain labor relations, and further erode public trust. We remain ready to work with the city, but they have to show up. Wojciechowicz replied to a request for comment via email, saying she was traveling but would have a statement as soon as possible. Dunkirk has been in financial distress since 2016. Shutting of the NRG power plant, which supplied $3 million annually to the city in payments in lieu of taxes. In January, State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli and Chautauqua County District Attorney Jason Schmidt announced that Mark Woods, the city's longtime treasurer, had been indicted on charges alleging he stole more than $120,000 from the city and covered it up with the falsification of city records. Last year, Governor Kathy Hochul signed a bill to give Dunkirk $13.7 million emergency loan to be paid off over the next 15 years. In November, DiNapoli had released an audit revealing that the city's most recent budget was so incomplete, out of date, and inaccurate that it kept DiNapoli's auditors from fully evaluating it. The bill not only extends to Dunkirk's Fiscal Recovery Act, but repeals it, replaced with stricter conditions under the Molitor-Borrello bill. The city must pass a home rule resolution, comply with all collective bargaining agreements, and Wojciechowicz must report the city's financial records to State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli's office in the absence of a city fiscal control officer. These are not unusual requests. They are basic standards of accountability for a situation of this nature, the lawmakers said.
Thank you, Larry. Exec at Buffalo Biodiesel is cited in late-night car crash. A top Buffalo biodiesel executive accused of abandoning a Tesla sedan following a late-night car crash near Niagara Square was ticketed by Buffalo police, who previously charged former Erie County Sheriff's official DJ Granville for leaving a loaded gun in the same vehicle. Thomas S. George Jr. was cited for an improper left turn, a failure to keep right, failure to stop at a stop sign, and leaving the scene of a property damage crash, according to a police report obtained by the Buffalo News on Monday in response to a Freedom of Information Law request. He is set to appear before the City of Buffalo's Traffic Violations Agency on June 25th. George, 60, is a former Evans Town Board member who briefly served as acting town supervisor and retired Evans police lieutenant, according to media reports and his social media account. He now serves as Chief Operating Officer of Buffalo Biodiesel, which collects used cooking oil from restaurants and converts it into biofuels. The crash happened about 9:30 p.m. May 19th on Delaware Avenue near Niagara Square. A Buffalo police officer responded to a suspicious vehicle near City Hall that had damage to the front driver's side. The 2022 model Tesla Model 3, registered to Buffalo Biodiesel, was left on and unlocked, police said. A police report from the incident had listed the driver of the vehicle as unknown. A company representative had said the vehicle was driven by an off-duty employee, later identified as George. George's attorney, Carl Morgan, did not immediately respond to a request for comment Tuesday afternoon. Jeremiah Lenahan, a Buffalo Biodiesel attorney, said the company is aware of the tickets issued to George by Buffalo police. Mr. George has been an exemplary employee. He is an invaluable asset to Buffalo Biodiesel's operation that works towards creating a greener and healthier future. Mr. George came to Buffalo Biodiesel with 40 years of unquestionable public service, Lenahan said. This is a personal matter that Mr. George will be handling with his family and his attorney. The May 19th crash received extensive attention because Buffalo police found in the vehicle a loaded gun owned by Daniel DJ Granville, who retired in March from his position as head of narcotics for the Erie County Sheriff's Office. Buffalo Biodiesel has retained a firm owned by Granville to conduct investigations and assist in the prosecution of crimes against the biofuels company. Granville pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor last year in connection with a series of crashes into 7 parked vehicles on Buffalo's west side in April 2024, a case that raised questions about whether he received special treatment because of his law enforcement status. In the May 19th incident, Granville has been charged with a misdemeanor for failing to safely store a gun, according to a Buffalo police report. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Upgrades unveiled for animal shelter. As the city works toward finding a new site and resources to build a new animal shelter, it has secured funds to improve the current downtown location and bring it into compliance with state law, the mayor said Tuesday. Mayor Sean Ryan announced more than $412,000 in state and private funding to improve an outdoor play area, provide new laundry equipment, and to expand the size and number of enclosures for animals kept at the City of Buffalo Animal Shelter. Ryan, standing in front of the shelter on Oak Street, flanked by shelter staff and volunteers, administration officials, and a 2-year-old dog named Rue, said the funding will put the city on track to bring the city into compliance with state law while making conditions better for both animals and the people who use the shelter. Buffalo deserves a modern animal shelter that meets the needs of animals, staff, volunteers, and the entire community, Ryan said. The improvements we're announcing today will help stabilize and modernize this facility, but it's short term. Planned improvements to the existing shelter include expansion of kennel space into an existing garage area, installation of a new HVAC system to improve comfort and air quality for animals and staff, construction of a new outdoor recreation area for shelter animals, installation of sound deadening ceiling tiles in animal housing areas, purchase and installation of new cat kennels, purchase and installation of a hydraulic lift examination table. The city will receive $370,838 from the State Department of Agriculture and Market grants and $41,204 in matching funds from Friends of the City of Buffalo Animal Shelter. Ryan, who promised as part of his campaign last year to address the conditions at the animal shelter and find a new home better suited for the staff and animals' needs, said the city has also added new positions in this year's budget. I promise to find ways to improve the conditions at their current shelter while we're working on the long-term plan, Ryan said. That included a commitment the city would be better about applying for state and federal money that's available to improve conditions of animal shelter. Ryan said he has also worked with AFSCME 264, the blue-collar union that represents shelter workers, to tweak the rules around what work volunteers can do to help care for the animals. Volunteers play a critically important role in running the shelter, and we want to recognize the volunteers for the hard work that they've been doing on this to help us supplement the city workforce. Last year, a state law went into effect updating regulations for shelters, including expanding the minimum size of enclosures, criteria for materials that can be used in the shelters, and temperature control requirements. The administration expects the funds to be secured later this year and for work on some of the projects to begin in 2026. Commissioner of the Department of Public Works, Nolan Skipper, whose department oversees the animal shelter, said they hope to complete all the projects by next year. Once we receive that money, and we can bid that out pretty quickly and get work done, Skipper said. So we're hoping they can start this year and then finish up next year, depending on the scope of each project. The city has been working toward finding a new location for the shelter for years, but had not proposed past the initial research stage. South District Council member Christopher Scanlon, then serving as acting mayor and running against Ryan, identified a Niagara Street location owned by Ellicott Development as the site for the new shelter. But Ryan was critical of the decision. Other experts also warned that the building would be hard to retrofit for the purpose of an animal shelter. Ryan said Tuesday his animal shelter committee is working to find a new location, but is still in the initial stages of identifying the needs for the new shelter and creating a list of potential locations. They hope to be far enough along in that process by the fall to include funding for the project in the 2027 capital budget. When you do these large projects, you've got to get it right the first time, because if not, you end up with an undersized or poorly designed shelter, Ryan said. Jen Butera, the new director of the shelter, said she has approached the job with optimism since coming on, and these developments are a sign that they are heading in the right direction. This will benefit the entire animal population of Buffalo, because now we will be able to take on more stray animals, more animals that are in need of shelter, more animals that need help, whose owners can't afford to provide care, Butera said.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:17. On to sports. Bill's article here. I want to be around that. When Brady took on his new role, Carmichael was also ready for a fresh start. Pete Carmichael isn't used to this. Sure, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator is used to seeing Joe Brady hype up the offense. But now that Brady is a head coach, he's cheering for the defensive side of the ball too, and frequently. Well, I get it, Carmichael said with a laugh. It comes with the territory for him. And I think that everybody understands, as he's about the team and he's the leader. And I don't want to see him cheer much for the defense unless it's on Sunday. Carmichael has known Brady since the two overlapped with the New Orleans Saints, where Carmichael spent 2006 to 2023 before eventually following Sean Payton to Denver. When Brady took on his new role as the Bills head coach this offseason, Carmichael was also ready for a fresh start. That was really a lot of excitement about coming here, something new, something different after having been pretty much in the same system, Carmichael said ahead of Tuesday's OTA. And again, there's some things here that are similar, some things that are different. But the excitement of coming here, I'll tell you this, one of the things that Joe said to me when I first got hired was, you're going to love it here. You're going to love the people in the locker room, the players, the building, and he's 100% right. It's always been about the people for Carmichael. When he fell in love with coaching, he followed a familiar path. His dad, Pete Carmichael, Sr., was a coach at Boston College for 18 years and in the NFL for 9 more, and growing up, Carmichael Jr. was around the sport plenty. I just kind of saw how much passion he had about it and how much he loved the game and relationships that he had with players, Carmichael said. And so I always felt, I want to be around that. Now, I played baseball in college at BC, but I always kind of knew I wanted to get back to football from when I finished playing in high school. Why football and not baseball? I just think it's such a team game and such a team sport that there's nothing better, Carmichael said. It certainly doesn't hurt that Carmichael is now getting to coach Bills quarterback Josh Allen. While Allen's relationship with Brady dates back, he's now getting to build rapport with Carmichael too. This, of course, is hardly Carmichael's first stint around a high-profile QB. He was with Drew Brees for all those years, first in San Diego, actually, when Brees was there at the start of his career, and then in New Orleans as quarterback's coach, pass game coordinator, and offensive coordinator. Peyton called plays in New Orleans until he left. His successor, Dennis Allen, convinced Carmichael to stay around and run the offense until 2024 when he left to rejoin Peyton. He's great in the meetings, Carmichael said of Allen. Extremely smart. He communicates well. He has a great relationship with the players, the way he's able to talk to them and communicate. It's been all positive with him. It's been fun. It's not just the meetings where Allen impresses. Even in a short period of time, Carmichael has seen Allen balance hard work and fun. Plus, when he hits the field, he's a dream for Carmichael to work with. I just think that he's got a great personality, Carmichael said. He likes to keep it light, but when it's time to get serious, he does. But it's just the overall him going out there executing and obviously his ability. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to hockey. Dahlin finishes third in Norris voting. Buffalo Sabres captain Rasmus Dahlin finished third in voting for the Norris Trophy in honor of the NHL's best defenseman, the league announced Tuesday morning. Dahlin's third-place finish equals the best in Sabres history, matching former Buffalo captain Jim Schoenfeld's third in 1980 behind Montreal's Larry Robinson and Toronto's Boreas Salming. Columbus' Zach Werenski captured the award for the first time in his career, and Colorado's Cale Makar, the winner in 2022 and 2025, finished second. Werenski finished with 113 first-place votes and 1,589 points in the voting by members of the Professional Hockey Writers Association. Makar had 47 firsts and 1,191 points, while Dahlin had 13 firsts and 657 points. Dahlin was named second on 23 ballots and also received 53rd place votes, 30 fourths, and 26 fifths. Edmonton's Evan Bouchard finished fourth, and Detroit's Moritz Seider was fifth. Dahlin, 26, finished eighth in the Norris voting in 2023 and sixth last year. No Buffalo player has ever won the award. Dahlin posted a career-high 74 points this season while leading the Sabres to the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since 2011. He had 19 goals, one off his career high, and 55 assists while posting a career-best plus 18 rating and averaging 24 minutes, 11 seconds per game. I'm just excited to get back in the gym, get more explosive, get faster and in better condition, Dahlin said when reflecting on his season ending during the exit interview May 19th. Being able to play high quality in my minutes. I think my explosiveness has to get better and I need to be able to get my power on skating. Dahlin was a standout during his first trip to the playoffs, collecting 4 goals and 10 assists for 14 points in 13 games. He scored the tying goal in the third period of Buffalo's Game 7 overtime loss to the Montreal Canadiens on May 18th in KeyBank Center and keyed Buffalo's 8-3 win in Game 6 2 nights early at Montreal's Bell Center with a goal and 4 assists. That outburst marked the first 5-point game in NHL history by a defenseman whose team was facing playoff elimination. We definitely took a step in the right direction, Dahlin said. We've taken steps this year. We've really grown as an organization, as a team, as individuals. It's a sour taste after that Game 7 loss, but in the big picture, we have done some good things this year and we have really grown, so I'm excited for our future. Dahlin's season of professional success, which included a key role on defense for Sweden at the Winter Olympics in Italy, was almost so marked by personal triumph that began with the summer turmoil. Dahlin shepherded his fiancée, Karolina Vitovac, through a health crisis that grew to heart failure, a heart transplant, and months of rehab in Sweden before she was able to travel to Buffalo in March. Dahlin had 2 brief leaves of absence from the Sabres in the first half of the season to attend Madovac's medical appointments and get updates from doctors on her condition. Largely as a result of the ordeal, Dahlin is also a finalist for the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy. That's given by the PHWA each year in honor of the player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. The winner will be announced during the Stanley Cup Final.
Thank
Linda?
you, Larry. Thank you, Larry. 2026 World Cup. Who's the favorite? Counting down all 48 teams. The World Cup is nearly here and it's bigger than ever. With an expanded field, more teams from every region had an opportunity to reach the finals. As the matches approach, USA Today Sports ranks all 48 teams from the least likely to lift the trophy to the most likely. All right, folks, counting down here. 48, Curacao. 47, Jordan. 46, Qatar. 45, Cape Verde. 44, New Zealand. 43, Iraq. 42, Saudi Arabia. 41, Panama. 40, Czechia. 39, Tunisia. 38, Uzbekistan. 37, Haiti. 36, Iran. 35, South Africa. 34, Bosnia and Herzegovina. 33, Algeria. 32, Paraguay. 31, DR Congo. 30, Scotland. 29, Egypt. 28, Sweden. 27, Australia. 26, Ghana. 25, South Korea. 24, Austria. 23, Ivory Coast. 22, Turkey. 21, Canada. 20, Uruguay. 19, Morocco. 18, Switzerland. 17, Croatia. 16, Colombia. 15, Japan. 14, Norway. 13, United States. 12, Mexico. 11, Belgium. 10, Ecuador. 9, Senegal. 8, Portugal. 7, Brazil. 6, Germany. 5, Netherlands. 4, England. 3, Argentina. 2, France. And they expect Spain to be number 1. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to baseball. Union rejects salary cap proposal. Major League Baseball players would be taking a $500 million pay cut, with portions of their contracts becoming non-guaranteed if they accepted MLB's proposal for a salary cap, said Bruce Mayer, interim executive director for the MLB Players Association. That's something this union has fought against for decades, based on our belief that it's bad for players at all levels, Meyer said, explaining the union's strong opposition to the concept. And not just monetarily. Bad for freedom, bad for competition. Eliminates truly guaranteed money. Bad for the fans, in our view. Bad for players at every level, particularly bad for the middle class. Fundamentally, that system is anti-competitive. It's a form of institutionalized collusion. When asked how to convince MLB owners, who are beginning a quarterly meeting Tuesday in New York, that the union would never cave into the owners' attempt for a potential lockout and would resist a salary cap like the NFL, NBA, and NHL, they reaffirmed the union's strength. Our union has never been broken, Meyer said. It never will be. So you can take away a different lesson from our history, but that would be a big mistake. Our players have what they have, including being the only sports that doesn't have this ultimate restriction, a salary cap, because our players have always been the most unified, and that's going to continue. Meyer, speaking publicly for the first time since the union and MLB exchanged proposals last week, said that he and the players were bitterly disappointed in the MLB's initial offer, which did not address items such as free agency, minimum salary, salary arbitration, or the draft. The proposal, he said, is worse than the one the MLB offered in 1994, before the sport endured the longest work stoppage in MLB history, 232 days, canceling the 1994 World Series. Very surprised, he said. I thought they would try harder to make it look good, and they didn't even do that. While MLB proposed a $245.3 million salary cap, along with a $171.2 million payroll floor for teams, Mayer said the numbers were misleading, considering that it didn't include benefits and amateur signings, which included a promise of a 50-50 revenue-sharing split. Meyer says that the players already are receiving more than 50% of the revenue now, so why would they accept a reduction that includes an escrow account, which could reduce pay if revenue doesn't meet projections? He cited the NBA players are having to return nearly $500 million last year when the league didn't meet their revenue projections. Major League Baseball wanted no time disputing Meyer's claims, issuing a release within 45 minutes of Meyer's press briefing. Our salary cap and floor proposals address our fans' concerns by leveling the playing field while sharing baseball revenue with the players 50-50 like the other leagues, MLB spokesperson Glenn Kaplan said. Under our proposal, Major League players will receive more compensation in year one of the system than in 2026. We are ready to listen if the MLBPA wants to counter our proposal at the bargaining table. The massive disparity in MLB isn't because of the Dodgers and Mets payrolls, Meyer insists, but from teams who receive monies in revenue sharing but refuse to use it for their player payroll. Our payrolls are designed to reward and incentivize competition, Meyer said. In other words, to get clubs, their owners who are choosing not to compete, and that will benefit players and fans. Believe that will be the single best change that could be made to benefit fans. Incentivize and reward teams that are actually using revenue sharing money and other forms of subsidies for the purposes for which they were intended, namely to put a better product in the field and not to put it in their pockets in the form of profits. Meyer cited the Padres, who reside in one of MLB's smallest markets, who increased their payroll to the third highest in MLB 3 years ago, and now have the second largest attendance in baseball with a perennial playoff team. We want to encourage more San Diego's, Meyer said. San Diego is a small market team that went out, decided to compete, signed a lot of players, turned around their franchise. They've grown attendance, they've grown interest, and we've all seen the explosion of their franchise value. The Padres were recently sold for $3.9 billion, the highest franchise sale in MLB history.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:32. On to Asking Eric. Adult children put distance between selves and mom. Dear Eric, I have 2 adult children. They are both married and live in different states away from me. I worked very hard to be a good and loving parent, and after a divorce that I did not want, I struggled a lot emotionally. The children lost their home, and so did I. I have been on excellent terms with my children. This year, my daughter told me that she is dealing with her feelings from her past and does not want to communicate with me at all anymore. She has become very close to my ex and his family, and she got married. My son has 2 beautiful children and a wonderful wife. I wanted to move to be closer to my grandchildren, but my son said that he and his wife prefer if I only make visits seasonally. I live alone in a state where I have no family. I do not know what to do and feel very scared and alone in the world. I just don't know how to do this part of life, and I desperately miss my children and wish they would allow me into their current lives in some way. Do you have any advice for me? From Granny Alone. Dear Granny, I'm so sorry you're experiencing this. The pain and fear you have now and the struggles you've had to navigate in the past are a heavy weight. First of all, you can move wherever you want. It sounds like there is work to be done on your relationship with your son, but his preference that you visit seasonally is just a preference, and living closer doesn't necessarily mean that you'll have to visit more. So if being in a different community will help you, make those plans anyway. Consider writing your son and daughter letters explaining what you're going through, what challenges you're facing, and specifically, what you would like your relationships with them to look like. Talk about your confusion regarding the change in your relationships with them and your willingness to do whatever's necessary to get back to a healthier place. This is just the first step in rebuilding these relationships, and it may not produce results right away. This is why it's important that you start to build other relationships, whether through volunteering, faith community, a local senior center, or by reaching out to friends. Many older adults find it hard to build new relationships as life goes on and longtime friends move or pass away. I mentioned this to reassure you that you're not alone, but also to emphasize how crucial it is that you reach out, even though it's hard. Dear Eric, having been involved in the caretaking of several friends or members of family who are in the process of dying, I felt the letter from 2 Left Behind about 2 friends who are being shut out of their third friend's end-of-life process heartbreaking. Some of the people I have worked with want friends and family around as much as possible and seem to only be limited by their own energy and awareness. They don't want to die alone, but rather be surrounded by those who can give them support and love. At the other end are those who want to go out in a much more private manner, not alone necessarily, but with a very limited number of people, mostly family. I know for a fact one of those people didn't want others to remember her as she looked when she was sick. Another had spiritual work to do, and another was just so mad she only tolerated those who could offer care and services, so different from her earlier healthy days when she was the life of the party and known for her positive outlook on life. I guess what I am asking too is to understand that dying is a very personal thing, and it is best to remember the good times you have had with the person and try not to focus on why you were left out of the dying process, which is often a roller coaster itself. Each person handles it on their own terms, some with fear, some with hope, some with silence, some with activity, some with don't want people to see them sick. But it is a time to let them finish their time here on planet as they may. I encourage people to focus on the good memories and friendships that they were able to live together. It's never easy or simple. Dear Never Easy or Simple, thank you for this very wise perspective and important reminder. In a similar vein, I found the book The In-Between, Unforgettable Encounters During Life's Final Moments by hospice nurse Hadley Lahos, Vlahos, to be extraordinarily enlightening. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. As Trump claims talks, Iran reports none are going on with Washington. Dubai, Washington, London. Iran is reviewing a proposed agreement with the U.S. to halt their war, but has not communicated with Washington for a few days. Iranian media reported on Tuesday, though President Trump said negotiations had been going on continuously. More than 3 months after the U.S. and Israel launched strikes against Iran, the conflict is stuck in a stalemate, with a shaky ceasefire in place while the pivotal Strait of Hormuz remains largely shut to maritime traffic. Iran has not yet responded to a proposal final text of a temporary deal and was taking a stern approach given what it sees as a history of U.S. noncompliance and a long-standing mistrust, Mehr news agency cited a source as saying. The semi-official Fars agency also cited a source, added that messages on the possible deal or memorandum of understanding had stopped a few days ago, with the last one being Tehran's clear message over Lebanon, where Iran is seeking a halt to Israel's incursion against its ally Hezbollah. Trump said that suggestion was false and erroneous, and that the conversations between the two sides had continued without a pause. The conversation between us has been going on for 4 days, including 4 days, 3 days ago, 2 days ago, 1 day ago, and today, he said in a social media post. He made similar comments on Monday before the Iranian report. Trump said on Monday there would be a deal over the next week to extend a ceasefire agreed in early April and reopen the strait. Since mid-March, he has repeatedly said he is close to a deal which would postpone thorny issues, including the future of Iran's nuclear program. A ceasefire has largely held since early April, but Iran and the U.S. have exchanged strikes several times over the past week. Trump has said stopping Iran acquiring nuclear weapons was his top priority. Iran has always denied wanting to build a nuclear bomb, saying its atomic program is for peaceful purposes only. Push for limited deal. In the wider war, Iran is pushing for a limited interim agreement as it tries to ease economic pressure while avoiding major concessions on its nuclear program, according to Iranian sources. Tehran is seeking to end to hostilities across all fronts, including Lebanon, access to billions of dollars in oil reserves and revenues, waivers on crude exports, a lifting of a U.S. blockade on its ports, and continued leverage over the strait. Trump is under pressure to reopen the strait and curb U.S. fuel prices while not making concessions to Iran. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is also Trump's national security advisor, said in a testimony to Congress that the U.S. negotiating team had not offered Iran sanctions relief in exchange for opening the strait, though he said that was the first condition it must meet. Iran is being sanctioned because they've highly enriched uranium. Iran is being sanctioned because of their nuclear activities. If they agree to give up those things, there will be sanctions relief associated with their commitment and compliance with those agreements, he said. Iran's elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said on Tuesday that 24 vessels had transited the straits in the past 24 hours after obtaining permission from the Guard's Navy. Highlighting the risk at sea, the world's largest shipping group, MSC, said on Tuesday that one of the vessels was struck by 2 projectiles while in Iraq's Qusayr port the previous day. Revolutionary Guard said they carried out the attack in retaliation for a U.S. attack on an Iranian vessel in the Gulf of Oman. The wide-reaching impact of the crisis was laid bare by UN Children's Agency's UNICEF, which said surging transport costs and supply chain disruptions were hindering life-saving aid for Gaza, Lebanon, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mali, Somalia, South Sudan, Nigeria, and elsewhere. Crypto sanctions. Meanwhile, the U.S. announced sanctions on Iran's biggest cryptocurrency exchange, accusing it of enabling the Iranian government and blacklisted state institutions to circumvent Western sanctions. The new sanctions follow a Reuters investigation published on May 1st, which showed how Nobitex had become a central node in a parallel financial system used to process hundreds of millions of dollars for Iran's central bank and the IRGC. The report also revealed how Nobitex continued operating even after the government imposed internet shutdown, processing millions of dollars of transactions. While Iran's economy is in freefall, the regime has chosen to co-opt digital asset technology for its own corrupt agenda, including evading sanctions and transferring wealth out of the country, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in an emailed statement. The Reuters investigation showed how Nobitex is controlled by 2 brothers, one from one of Iran's most powerful families, with close ties to the new supreme ruler. The 2 members of the Karazi family are one of the most influential dynasties in the Islamic Republic. Corporate records show that when the exchange started, the brothers were listed under a surname rarely used by members of the family. Treasury announced Tuesday that the 2 brothers, Syed Mohammed Ali Aghabar Mohammed Ali and Syed Mohammed Agmar Mohammed Ali, had also been individually sanctioned along with the exchange Chief Executive Officer Amir Hossein Rad. Nobitex had provided significant support to the Iranian government and facilitated a significant number of digital transactions linked to the IRGC and Iran's central bank, the U.S. Treasury said in a statement. Following the commencement of U.S. combat operations in Iran, Nobitex played a role in protecting and moving assets and funds out of Iran to shield regime wealth despite internet blackouts. In an emailed statement to Reuters in April, Nobitex said it had no direct government connections and denied assisting the state. It said any illicit funds moving through Nobitex did so with management approval or awareness. The company also said the 2 brothers had never used an alternative identity or changed their identity.
Thank you, Larry. Some local news. BTPM proves to be financially stable and resilient. Buffalo Toronto Public Media, BTPM, Buffalo Toronto Public Media, is financially stable, has added almost 7,000 new members, and doesn't plan any job cuts despite losing $2.2 million in federal funding last year. Those are some of the takeaways for comments from the leadership of the local public media organization last week during a State of the Stations broadcast. WBBZ's John DiSculio was the moderator of the 90-minute event that featured Tom Calderon, President and Chief Executive Officer, Nancy Hammond, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Sylvia Bennett, Senior Vice President and Chief Development Officer, Catherine Larson, Vice President of Content Distribution, and S.J. Velasquez, a former Buffalo News editor who is Senior Director of Audio Strategy. The financial status of BTPM was the most positive news. The leadership praised the Western New York and Canadian communities for raising their financial support after the Trump administration eliminated federal funding. There also has been some belt-tightening at BTPM. All in all, we are probably in a better place than I anticipated being, said Hammond. We are just about covering the gap of the rescission of federal funding. Here are some more of the significant takeaways from the event. Classical answer. BTPM Classical's previously announced move from 94.5 FM to 88.7 FM may make some listeners wonder where the music has gone when NPR's morning edition airs from 7 to 9 a.m. weekdays. All Things Considered weekdays airs from 4 to 6 p.m. weekdays, and Wait, Don't Tell Me airs at 10 a.m. Saturday. Velasquez noted a pure classical stream carries the programs preempted by the news programs. Name change. BTPM NPR, which is moving from 88.7 FM to the new commercial station 94.5 FM, is being renamed The Source in August. It will feature a mix of new and returning programs, sports, and music. BTPM The Bridge will be simulcast at night. There will be more local news. The station plans to go hard on breaking news, something that 88.7 FM have been criticized for downplaying during major local news events. There will be a couple of new live programs and a new partnership with CBC. Calderon realizes the radio changes may be disruptive, but expects the result to be better after listeners get used to them. Stay classy, BTBM. The commercials on 94.5 FM won't make you want to shout. The plan is for the ads to be consistent with the way the public station always has operated and not ones that make loud noises to get attention. Double duty. Jay Moran, the newsman with the golden voice, will be heard on both the 88.8 FM and 94.5 FM at different times of the day because news programs will be carried on both channels. He also is the public address announcer for the Buffalo Sabres home games. Thank you, Canada. There has been no wavering of financial support from Canada, despite President Trump's campaign to make the country the 51st American state. The BTPM leaders noticeably never mentioned the president's name when discussing the Canadian backlash, which has led to fewer Canadians crossing the border into the United States. Canadians are very generous to BTPM. Brooklyn Cheer, BTPM, The Bridge, the music channel that streams nationally, has become increasingly popular in Buffalo and Toronto. Somewhat surprisingly, Brooklyn is the number 3 market for the channel. Friday Night Development. Friday Night Lights, which has concentrated on high school sports as an additional way for BTPM to embrace the community, is moving from BTPM Create to the more popular linear channel BTPM PBS, where the audience is expected to grow even more. Rainbow Connection. The 4-episode test run last fall on the revival of Reading Rainbow was so successful that it will be returning this summer with 24 new episodes featuring Michael Threets as host. The original program, co-created by Tony Butino of WNED-TV, the previous name of BTPS PBS, ran from 1983 to 2006. That's the spirit. BTPM continues to look for local productions to fill out its schedule. Among the upcoming TV documentaries with a local angle is CFNY, The Spirit of Radio. Unanswered questions. There was no word on what is going to happen to programs either produced or distributed by NPR, including Weekend Edition with Scott Simon, Fresh Air, and Here and Now, which had aired on 88.7 but can't air on a commercial station. However, BTPM release noted that additional programming and schedule details will be shared throughout the summer. A BTPM news release noted that listeners will continue to have access to NPR programming and on-demand content through btpm.org, the BTPM Listen app, and NPR digital platforms. Help Desk Day. From 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. July 25th, BTPM will help viewers and listeners program their devices to receive BTPM channels, Download the app and learn how to receive BTPM Plus, the exceptional streaming channel that carries a large library of programs. And BTPM continues to need help. The leaders aren't anticipating receiving federal aid in the future, so BTPM needs the same kind of support it has received since it lost funding to be self-sustaining in the future. Hammond noted that the new fiscal year starts July 1st, when BTPM needs to start filling the $2.2 million annual federal funding gap all over again. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Green card confusion. U.S. agency announces change in policy for permanent residency. As a U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services policy announcement raised confusion among people who seek green cards. A green card confirms permanent residency to live and work in the United States and is granted to people who qualify through a range of categories, including work, family, and refugee status. Under the process, the USCIS adjudicators approve someone's adjustment of status if he or she is already in the U.S. or if people apply through consular offices outside the country. On May 22nd, USCIS said it will grant adjustment of status to permanent residency only in extraordinary circumstances. Officials said people already in the U.S. now will have to travel to their home countries and apply through consular offices. However, immigration law experts say the policy change is unclear on who would be required to leave the U.S., including possibly to countries on which the Trump administration placed travel restrictions. We're now trying to kind of figure out who's in and who's out in terms of who this actually applies to, Adriel Orozco, Senior Policy Counsel at the American Immigration Council, an advocacy organization that promotes fairness in immigration policy, told U.S. Today's The Excerpt podcast. What does it say? A May 21st USCIS policy memorandum said people who seek adjustment of status must do so through consular processing via the State Department outside the country. It also instructs immigration officers to look for positive and negative factors for a person's application to become a permanent resident. Parisa Karamat, a partner at the immigration law firm Fragelman, said the memo is applicable to any person who seeks adjustment of status. The Immigration and Nationality Act provision, now more than 70 years old, allows people who were admitted, inspected, and paroled into the country to go through the adjustment process, Orozco said. Who's included? Every year, about 1 million people become green card holders in the country, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Generally, Orozco said, about half of green card recipients apply from outside the U.S., and the other half get it while already in the country. The recent USCIS announcement applies to the latter category. While no one who seeks adjustment of status is exempted, Karamat said those who hold H&L visas, typically used for employers, may have an easier burden in terms of showing they warrant favorable exercise of discretion. Other factors, she added, may include community ties and involvement supporting communities, a history of complying with immigration and other American laws, filing tax returns, and perhaps family ties. People who entered through other visa categories or overstayed their visa may have a harder time, she said. A Fragelman legal explainer said the new guidance may make the adjustment process even more demanding, particularly if someone had interactions with law enforcement, immigration status violations, unauthorized employment, temporary entries followed by adjustment, or other factors seen as negative. In emailed responses to USA Today, the Department of Homeland Security said the policy would have no noticeable impact on highly qualified applicants and skilled professionals who have followed the law. DHS said President Donald Trump continues to prioritize immigration that helps the country culturally, socially, and financially, while preventing mass third world migration. People under refugee or asylum status can obtain a green card after a year because they've already been vetted to enter the U.S., Orozco said they wouldn't have to return to their home country under the memo. Besides, he added, it would be unjustified to send one back to the country they fled under refugee status. What about travel bans? The State Department indefinitely ended visa processing for people from 75 countries, according to the Council on Foreign Relations. These include U.S. adversaries such as Russia and Iran, but also Brazil, Colombia, and Thailand. Consular processing wouldn't be available to them. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beanon. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Cap Foundation, Tyverin Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which